Hey Tommy, as I'm sure you know, this week the Land Rover Defender rolled down a very steep ramp at the Frankfurt Auto Show, and after 12 years, the automotive media swooned. Everybody said it's going to be crazy off-road capable. But in this video, we're going to actually find out, not what it looks like, but if it's actually any good off-road. And how are we doing that?
Well, of course, none of us have been able to take it off-road. As far as I know, no automotive media at all has taken it off-road, but what we can do is put it on our TFL ORI scale, or off-road index, and see how the vehicle compares against off-road kings like the G-Wagon, the 4Runner TRD Pro, and of course the Wrangler. So we've got a number of objective categories that range from all-wheel drive systems to ground clearance to approach departure, and we'll see how it compares against its off-road competition.
And the cool thing is, we've not only done this off-road index, but we've taken the vehicles off-road, and the numbers actually line up with what happens off-road. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of what the TFL ORI is. We assign points. If the vehicle has a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive system, we assign it 20 points. A transfer case gets you 20. Terrain management only gets you 5. Good all-terrain tires get you 10 points. 9 inches of ground clearance or more, either regular or with air suspension, that's 5 points. Blocking diffs, front, center, and rear, 5 points apiece, so a possible 15 points. Armor, front, center, rear, 9 points. Approach departure angles, they have to meet at least 25 degrees, 5, 5, 5. Cameras in the front or 360 gets you 5 points, and then there's a 1 point for subjective, which means that we decide if it's any good or not. So basically it's all about the number, a maximum of 100 points. So let's go through the vehicles that we've actually tested off-road and go through their ORI index. And then at the very end of this, we'll show you how the Defender does, because most of the numbers are based on stats that have been released in the press release.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't we take a look at the 2019 Mercedes G550. Now, a couple of things: when we scored these vehicles, we scored them by the best possible trim, and they had to be stocked from the factory to meet our criteria here. So we're not changing tires, it's what comes with the factory out of the box. So let's take a look at the G-Wagon. So first of all, of course, it has a four-wheel drive system, so 20 points there, with a proper low-range transfer case. So another 20 points there. Now what about tires? Well, you can't actually buy a G550 from the factory with all-terrain tires. It only comes with all seasons, so only 0 points out of 10 in terms of tires. Let's take a look at ground clearance, 9.5 inches, that's well over 9, so it gets 5 points there. Then you've got proper differential locks, front, center, and rear on the Mercedes Wagon, so of course 15 points there. Armor and skid plates, we give it 3 points for front, center, and rear. The G-Wagon out of the factory has front and center. In terms of approach, departure, and breakover, what is over 25 degrees? Well, the approach is well over 25, as is the departure, but the breakover isn't so good on the stock G550, so only 10 points there. And then cameras, even though this Mercedes G starts at a whopping $125,000, you can't get more than a rear camera on the G550 because it's got that brush guard in the front that would block the front camera, so no points there. And then lastly, our subjective score, we gave it 0.5 out of 1 when we took it off-road, and that gives it a total score of 76.5 out of 100, which is a very respectable rating and is a good benchmark for a lot of other vehicles. But let's see how the Toyota 4Runner does.
Yeah, the thing that really lets the G-Wagon down, the thing that we found was its limiter is the fact that it doesn't have all-terrain tires. At the end of the day, where the tire meets the ground is where you've got your traction, and all seasons just don't do the job. So let's look at the 2019 Toyota 4Runner, the TRD Pro, the most off-road capable 4Runner you can get from the factory. Once again, 20 points for a four-wheel drive system, 20 points for a low transfer case, 10 points for having all-terrain tires, unlike the G-Wagon. We give it 5 points for having over 9 inches of ground clearance. Now, when we get down here to the differentials, it's got a center and a rear, no front locker, unlike the G-Wagon, so 10 points. This is, once again, protection, 6 points, front and center skid plates. Approach angle, departure angle, all that is really good actually on the 4Runner, so 15 points. But cameras let it down, 0 points for cameras, and then we assigned it a 0.5 subjective, giving it a total ORI index of 86.5, or 10 points more than the G-Wagon, and you'll find that has mainly to do with the fact that it does come with off-road tires. All right, Tommy, what's next?
You know what's funny about this?
Yeah.
So for 2020, the Tacoma now has side-facing cameras, but the 4Runner doesn't. So even the 2020 4Runner TRD Pro would still have 0 in that category. So this would be the same for the 2020 model, as it would be for the 2020 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon Unlimited. So we use the Unlimited trim because these are all 4-door vehicles. This is the one that sells the most, so this is the one we are, of course, going to rank. Also, we can't compare a 2-door to a 4-door if the other are 4 doors. So in terms of 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive system, obviously 20 points. Low range transfer case is 20 points. All-terrain tires. The Rubicon comes with KO2s from the factory, so 10 points there. 10.8 inches of ground clearance, so 5 points in ground clearance. Differential locks, front, center, and rear, 15 total. Then you've got skid plates front and center, so 6 there. Let's talk about the approach, departure, and breakover. Now, approach and departure are both great on the Unlimited Rubicon, but breakover isn't quite up to the same standard that we would want it to be, so only 10 points there. And then cameras. The Gladiator, of course, has that really cool front-facing trail cam, but the Wrangler doesn't, so 0 points in terms of camera systems for a subjective of 0.6. Extremely capable off-road. The total Wrangler Unlimited Rubicon ORI score is 86.6, which is very impressive. Now, a couple of caveats we should explain before we go to the Defender 110. We only know all the numbers on the 110.
Right.
So there is a 90 coming to short wheelbase. We don't know the stats on that yet. So we will do a future video where we compare the short wheelbase Wrangler to the short wheelbase Defender, but for now, these are all the stretched 4-door versions.
Yeah, and one thing this does not take into account whatsoever is price, because obviously the G-Wagon is the most expensive of this bunch, right? Starting well over $100,000. The TRD Pros, those are about 45.
They're mid-40s.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Rubicons.
Same thing with the Rubicons, maybe a little bit more expensive. And of course, pricing has been announced, so there is one that is just over $50,000.
But that one's not it.
But that one's not it.
For this comparison, we used the 110X, which looks to be the most off-road, worthy, kind of aggressive model with the coolest features. So this is the one that we went for. Do you want to break it down?
Yeah, I'll break it down. The issue with this one, of course, is it looks like on paper it's going to be affordable, maybe $50,000, $60,000.
Starting.
But I don't believe that it's going to be that affordable, because dealers in America make their money not on the vehicle but on options, and they're going to option them out to the max. So these are going to be a lot more expensive. I would say in terms of like pricing, when you actually go buy one, not what it's on paper, when you go to the dealership, right? It's probably the TRD Pro is going to be the least expensive, followed by the Wrangler, followed by the Defender, followed by, of course, the G-Wagon.
Yep, for sure.
All right, so let's talk about what it scored, the thing you guys have all been waiting for. Once again, 20 points. It does have an all-wheel drive, in this case, 4-wheel drive system. Transfer case, yes.
Pause.
20 points. Yes.
Pause. This is a very important distinction. Notice on our score here, it's 20 points or 5 if it has terrain management. Now, the Defender has transfer case and terrain management, but it doesn't score 25 here because terrain management, as cool as it sounds, in our experience has been more of kind of an off-road gimmick than a real actual impact in the off-road ability. So locking diffs and that stuff impacts it a lot more.
Now, all-terrain tires gets 10, optional in the base 110 model.
Yep, but the X has them. They're Goodyear Wranglers, so 10 points there.
So let's go to ground clearance. Obviously, it has air suspension, and so what we do is we use the highest possible setting, and so you're at 11.5, which is actually higher than a Wrangler when you're at the highest possible setting, so it does get those 5 points. This is where it gets interesting in my book, because we're only getting 10 points for locking diffs. Only standard center, optional rear, but no front locker like the Wrangler or the G-Wagon. That's a little disappointing, actually.
Okay.
But Land Rover has done that forever now.
Yeah, I'm not too bummed about that. I am really bummed about this, though, which is armor and skid plates. Now, we have done a ton of digging into this subject, and it looks like, first of all, it's got these plastic covers underneath the entire underside to make it look like an F1 car.
Yeah.
So it's super aero. But we've only seen optional front and rear scuff plates. So not necessarily a big beefy skid plate, but what looks to be like a scuff plate. So I'm going to give it 0 in that category. If we hear back from Land Rover otherwise, we will post in the comment section below. But 0 points in terms of proper underbody protection.
Now, it does get full points for approach, breakover, and departure angles.
Yeah, really great breakover angle and max height, 28 degrees. And then, of course, cameras. This is where it makes a comeback compared to the other three. Not only do you have the 360-degree camera, but you've got that really wild trail view camera where it makes like the hood disappear, which you've used on the Evoque.
I've tried that on the Evoque. It's actually really cool. And then, of course, We haven't given it a subjective score.
We haven't driven
We
it.
haven't driven it, but it's only 1 point, so it really isn't going to make or break the vehicle. All right, Tommy, drum
Ready?
roll. Yep.
Dun 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 dun. 85.
Wow. So, you know, there's not a lot between these three, right? So as it stands right now, the Wrangler and the 4Runner are a little bit better, with the Defender coming in right behind basically the 4Runner, but in front of the G-Wagon.
So let's kind of compare these two because these are the ones you're going to be most interested in, I think.
So Defender versus Wrangler?
Yeah, Wrangler versus Defender. So the Wrangler wins out with the front locker, so it gets an additional 5 points there. And then an additional 6 points with the underbody protection, right? So you're thinking, wow, how is this possible? Well, the Defender comes back on score with the breakover angle, and then also comes back on score with the off-road trail views. So this is ahead by 1 because it's got, you know, 1 extra point for skid plate there. But there's not much in between these two in terms of score because of this camera system. Now, of course, if the Wrangler came with the camera system,
Like the Gladiator.
like the Gladiator, this would be up in the low 90s.
Yeah.
But because that doesn't look like it's an option yet, if ever,
I think it's going to be an option.
you think so?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
For future model years?
Yeah, I think they'll have it as well because the Gladiator has it, so I'm sure it'll be on the Wrangler as well. So yeah, I think all that's left to do now is, of course, drive it
Yeah.
and see if these numbers actually hold up when you get into the mud and the dirt and Moab, which hopefully we'll be taking it to, you know, in the next year. It's going to be available spring of next year, so we're still at least,
Several months away.
well, more than that, probably half a year away, if not more. And hopefully there'll be a drive at some point where we can actually get it dirty and see how it does. But on paper, at least, it looks like it's a contender, and it looks like it's going to be really good off-road. I can't wait to drive it. How about you?
Yeah, me too. As always, this is Tommy.
And this is Roman saying thanks for watching. Remember, come back to tflcar.com for news, views, and of course, real-world off-roading reviews.
Yep, see you next time.